The repair tablet has a crack running from the lower left corner to the center of the screen, a souvenir from the first hour of the assault, when Roz threw herself into a maintenance junction and landed on it. The crack bisects the schematic of coolant relay 7B in a way that makes the fault indicator harder to read, but she can still read it. She has read enough cracked screens in enough bad situations that her brain auto-corrects for the damage, fills in the missing pixels the way a tongue finds a broken tooth, automatically without being asked. The fault indicator is still blinking. It has been blinking for 19 minutes. Under normal circumstances, a fault on relay 7B would be a 4-hour job. Pull the secondary housing, reseat the pressure coupling, run a diagnostic, log it, move on. It would be irritating and she would fix it and she would not think about it again. These are not normal circumstances, and she has not thought about relay 7B once since she noticed the fault, because in the upper right corner of the tablet screen, in a secondary feed she opened at 1417 to find an egress route and has not closed since 1422, there is Cass Okoro. Cass is 26 years old, was 26 years old. She has had the kind of laugh that you can hear from 3 corridors away, and that makes you feel, somehow, that whatever you are worrying about is probably survivable. She is on the floor of Medical Bay 1 with her palms facing up. She is wearing the Red Cross armband that she has worn every shift for the 18 months she has been posted to Tantalus, because Cass believed in symbols. Believed that symbols meant something, and Roz knows this because Cass said it once during a night shift over terrible, reconstituted coffee, that even in the most remote corner of human space, a red cross meant something that crossed any language barrier. On the feed at 1422, a Varath suppression unit entered Medical Bay 1. It raised the scanning instrument on its forward left limb. It swept the bay. The scanner passed over Cass, standing, hands raised, armband visible, making no movement, and the unit paused for exactly 1.3 seconds. Then it fired. Roz watched the full 6 seconds. She did not look away. Then she closed the feed. She opened the schematics window. She looked at the tunnel map of sub-level 2 for 4 seconds. Okay, she said, to the amber-lit 0.9-meter tunnel around her, to no one. Just that. The tunnels of Tantalus run like veins through the platform's body. Narrow, purposeful, lit in amber emergency strips that give everything the color of old photographs. They were built for human bodies specifically, which at the time of construction was simply a practical decision about the workforce. Right now it is the only strategic advantage she has, because a Varath suppression unit in full equipment cannot navigate these tunnels without turning sideways and losing its sensor array's forward coverage. She has crawled through these tunnels at 3 in the morning, with a pressure wrench in her teeth and a headlamp that needed new batteries. She knows where each junction leads the way. She knows the layout of the apartment she grew up in, not by thinking about it, but by the way her body moves without being told. The atmospheric processors run at 60 Hz under normal operation. It is a sound you stop hearing after the first week on Tantalus, the way you stop hearing traffic in a city. It becomes the silence beneath everything else, the baseline against which you measure what is actually happening. Roz learned to read it the way a doctor reads a pulse. At 14:06, 4 minutes before the first alarms, the hum dropped by 3 Hz. She was in the access tunnel above processing node 4 when it happened, and she stopped moving and tilted her head and thought, "That's wrong." By the time the alarms went off, she was already moving toward a more defensible position, which is why she is alive now and not in Medical Bay 1 with Cass. The kill feed on her tablet shows 43 crew members confirmed down in the first 12 minutes, 43 out of 61. She knows all of their names. She has worked with most of them. She has fixed equipment that was failing because of something they did wrong and never said anything about it, because that is not how you maintain a working relationship on a platform where you are going to be stuck together for 6 months at a time. She looks at the number 43, and she files it in the part of her brain where she keeps things she will deal with later, the same way she filed the fault indicator on relay 7B. The maintenance frequency crackles. The Varath have not jammed it. Their intelligence files, she will learn much later, categorized it as equipment telemetry, the routine noise of a platform talking to its own systems. They did not consider it worth jamming. They were not wrong to think that. They were wrong about what would be transmitted on it. Is anyone on this channel? The voice is small and very careful. 9 years old and trying to be calm in the way that children try to be calm when they have been told by adults that calm is the right thing to be, and are not entirely sure they believe it, and are doing it anyway because the adult who told them was someone they trusted. I'm in locker 3C. I can hear them on the other side of the door, and I think they're going to open it. Dara Achebe, Dr. Funke Achebe's daughter. Roz has seen her twice. Once when Funke brought her to the platform during a family visit period, and she spent the entire time in the hydroponics bay talking to the tomato plants like they were people, and once in the mess hall eating a bowl of cereal with absolute concentration, the way small children eat when they have decided that eating is the current activity and nothing else exists. Roz is already calculating the route to locker 3C when the second voice comes through. Roz. Yemi Adeyinka's voice from sublevel 3 is doing the thing where it sounds steady and in control because he has decided it is going to sound steady and in control. And behind that decision you can hear the weight of what it is costing him. 58 years old, born in Lagos, trained her on every system on this platform when she arrived 4 years ago with her compensated grip and her tolerance for bad coffee, and her habit of fixing things that hadn't broken yet because she could see that they were going to. He talked her out of quitting during a system failure in the second month that cost them both a week of sleep, and made her feel, briefly, that the whole operation was designed to fail. I can hear you breathing, Yemi says. I know you're on this channel. The girl needs you to move. Roz picks up the DeWalt DCG 460. The first Verath soldier she finds is standing at the junction of Corridor G9 and Maintenance Cross 3, which is the most direct route from her current position to Locker 3C. She finds it through the ventilation grate at coordinate 7G on her tunnel map, which puts her approximately 2 meters above and 3 meters behind its current position. She has 90 seconds before the patrol cycle she has been mapping in her head would move it on. She uses all 90 seconds. The armor is dark, the color of deep water, and it moves with a heaviness that speaks of equipment built for overwhelming force rather than agility. 4 limbs, as the intelligence files she memorized during the initial emergency briefing described, heavily armored at the primary joints, sensor cluster mounted on the forward aspect of the helmet housing, oriented forward and 60 degrees lateral, not behind. The weapon is held dominant right, support left, the left side carried slightly lower than the right. She notes the gap at the lower limb torso joint, a design compromise. You cannot armor everything at full coverage and maintain mobility. The gap is maybe 8 centimeters wide. She notes it, and she puts it away. She is not thinking about fighting it. Fighting it is a last resort, and last resorts are for when the primary and secondary options have already failed. She is thinking about the ammonia scrubber room 10 meters behind her current position, where 200 liters of lean-to-AG ammonium hydroxide at 28% concentration sit in a drum that she personally inspected 2 weeks ago and noted was slightly past its secure seal date, a finding she logged, and which had not yet been addressed because the supply run wasn't scheduled for another 3 weeks. The maintenance ventilation fan for Corridor G9 pulls air from the scrubber room through a duct she can access from the tunnel. She knows this because she is the one who ran the diagnostic on that ventilation system 8 months ago when it was running 4% below efficiency, and found a partial blockage in the intake duct that she cleared with a length of improvised wire. She gets the drum open. She rigs the fan to push rather than pull. She wets the fingers of her left hand, 4 fingers, the habit correcting itself from the ghost count of 6, and checks the airflow direction from the duct outlet. Then she climbs back to her observation position above the junction and she waits. Ammonia at 28% concentration is not, technically, classified as a chemical weapon. It is an industrial cleaning and refrigeration compound used in atmospheric processing across 17 human space installations and roughly 40 non-human facilities. The Verath Dominion, which has cataloged the industrial profiles of 400 conquered worlds, has encountered ammonia compounds many times. Their chemical sensors flag it at this concentration as a low-priority environmental contamination notice, not a threat, an anomaly to investigate and report. The soldier turns toward the contamination source. Roz drops from the ventilation access panel behind it and introduces the full magnetic housing weight of the DeWalt DCG460 to the sensor cluster on the back of its helmet. She has done demolitions work. She understands applied force at precise angles. The sensor cluster takes the impact at the optimal point, and she is already moving laterally when the soldier begins to go down, because she does not need to watch it complete the process. The sidearm is holstered at the lower right housing. Accessible with a grip configuration she has to improvise because the holster release is designed for a full Varath hand, not a four-fingered human one. It takes her 11 seconds. She considers this acceptable. Somewhere on the command channel. She cannot hear the command channel directly, but she will later read the transcripts. A Varath communications officer sends the following. Suppression Unit 47 is not responding to contact ping. Environmental contamination detected in Corridor G9. Biological units on this platform are assessed non-combatant. Unit 47, report. A pause. Logging as equipment malfunction. Continue sweep. Equipment malfunction. She moves through the tunnels with the sidearm in her right hand and the DeWalt in her left, and she maps the patrol spacing against what she can hear, and she identifies 3 locations between her current position and Locker 3C, where she could make the next contact happen on her terms rather than theirs. This is what the Combat Engineer Corps taught her about terrain. The terrain does not favor you by accident. The terrain favors whoever knows it better. She has spent 4 years learning every joint and junction of this platform, the way you learn a language you live inside, not from a manual, but from use, from problem solving, from the accumulated memory of 10,000 small repairs. She knows this platform better than anything alive. The 2 soldiers at the junction outside hydroponics are standing in the only configuration that makes tactical sense for that corridor. Staggered, overlapping fields of sensor coverage, no gap large enough for a direct approach from any of the 3 routes into the junction. She watches them from the tunnel access point for 40 seconds, and she counts the sensor sweeps and she maps the timing, and then she stops watching them and looks at the maintenance panel at her back. Panel SL2C, Sublevel 2, Cooling Section C. Behind it, the Messer Group liquid nitrogen coolant line running from the primary atmospheric processor to the sublevel heat exchange array, maintained at 196 degrees Celsius, at a pressure sufficient to cause rapid phase expansion, if released into an enclosed environment. The floor of Corridor Junction H7 is metal grating. Standard platform construction. The nitrogen vapor, heavier than the standard atmosphere mix, will pool at floor level. It will not be visible. It will read on Varath thermal sensors as an environmental anomaly and a temperature variance, a contamination notice. The same category of alert as the ammonia. They will not step around it. They do not have the framework to know they should step around it. She opens the bypass valve. 60 seconds, she counts them. She thinks while she counts about the positioning. She needs them slowed, not stopped, because stopped means they are still reporting, still communicating, and communication is the thing she cannot afford right now. The lower limb joint where she noted the armor gap during the 90-second observation at G9, that gap is a mechanical seal between the limb housing and the torso armor. Metal contracts in extreme cold. At 196 degrees Celsius, even through the insulation of the armor plating, the seal compression will begin within 30 seconds of extended contact. Mobility restriction. Response time degradation. She fires twice with the Varath sidearm. The trigger configuration is wrong for her grip, but she has been compensating for wrong grip configurations since she was 23 years old, and it is simply a variable she adjusts for. Both shots hit sensor clusters. She steps over the units and she does not look back. Locker 3C is 30 meters down the hydroponics corridor, past the germination racks and the grow lights that are still running, because the platform's automated systems do not know there is a reason to stop growing things. The locker door is standard maintenance lockout rating. From the outside. From the inside, it is not locked at all. Roz knocks twice. Then she says quietly, in the particular tone you use when you need someone to hear that you are not panicked, because if you are not panicked, then maybe they don't need to be. Dara, I'm Roz. I work with your mom. I'm going to open the door now. Dara Achebe is 9 years old and she has been in the dark for 53 minutes, and the first thing she does when the door opens is stand up very straight, The way a person stands up straight when they have promised someone they will be brave, and they are going to keep the promise even if keeping it is the hardest thing they have ever done. She does not cry. Her eyes are the eyes of someone who has been not crying very hard for 53 minutes and is continuing the project. Roz does not tell her about Funka. She will not tell her here in a corridor with the platform still under assault. There will be a time for that, and this is not it, and Roz knows the difference, because the Combat Engineer Corps taught her that some information is ordnance. You do not deploy it until you have control of the surrounding situation. I'm going to need you to hold onto my belt, Roz says, and not let go, whatever happens. Can you do that? Dara Achebe reaches out and takes a double fist grip of Roz's work belt with both hands, and she does not let go for the next 30 minutes. The 4 Varath units converging on her position at the sub-level 3 access junction are moving in a pattern that says someone has upgraded the tactical assessment on her. They are no longer treating this as environmental anomaly investigation. The spacing is tighter. The approach angles are overlapping in a way that eliminates the sensor shadow she exploited at G9. And one of the units is carrying what she identifies as a long-range thermal scanner, a dedicated detection instrument rather than the standard integrated sensor array. On the command channel, Fleet Commander Tessaveth is saying, "This is Fleet Commander Tessaveth. I am taking direct oversight of platform Tantalus suppression. I want a full biological assessment on the Category 7 unit currently active in sub-level access corridors. I want to know how many of our units it has engaged. I want to know why our suppression protocols are not working on a non-combatant biological from a pre-compact species. I want it found, not suppressed. Found. I want it intact." She is standing at panel M7. She knows this panel the way she knows her own face. She installed the secondary relay housing on M7 during the platform's 3rd maintenance cycle, 14 months ago, on a 12-hour shift that ran 16 hours because the coupling kept stripping, and she had to improvise a workaround using components from 2 different supplier specifications that were not designed to work together, but that she made work together through a combination of technical knowledge and the specific kind of stubbornness that Steeltown winters teach you before you are old enough to have learned more sophisticated approaches to problems. The structural grading on level 4 runs directly above the convergence point of the 4 approaching units. It carries standard platform electrical current, 480 volts, routed through the maintenance grid. Panel M7 controls the maintenance grid for this section. The reroute takes her 40 seconds because she does it correctly, because doing it incorrectly would trip the safety shutoffs, and she needs the safety shutoffs not to trip. The electromagnetic interference from a 480-volt surge through metal grating is not a weapon by any classification in the Varath Dominion's tactical database. It is an environmental anomaly, a power fluctuation, a contamination notice. 3 of the 4 units lose sensor cohesion simultaneously. The 4th, whose navigation system attempts to compensate for the sudden electromagnetic noise in the environment, receives a corrected heading that leads it, precisely, efficiently, with the full confidence of a well-maintained tactical system working exactly as designed, directly into the energized grating. Roz has already pulled Dara into the maintenance access corridor to sub-level 3 before the regroup begins. Yemi's voice on the maintenance channel is still steady. It is costing him more now. She can hear the difference. The pauses between words are calibrated, each one the pause of someone who is rationing the breath available for speech, because the breath available for speech is not as much as it used to be. "I'm coming," she says. "Give me 4 minutes." "Take your time," Yemi says, with the exact inflection of a man who has decided that irony is the appropriate register for this situation, which is something she has always respected about him. The crane array for sub-level 3 is remotely operable from the maintenance panel at junction SL3A. She knew it would be. She installed the remote uplink on that panel during the 2nd maintenance cycle, because the previous configuration required a manual operator at the crane station, which was a single point of failure design that struck her as lazy. Management approved the upgrade because it reduced labor hours. She approved the upgrade because she does not like single points of failure. The coolant pipe has shifted. What were 2 broken ribs when Yemi first called her R4, and she can hear the difference in how he breathes when the crane lifts the pipe clear, a sound that he swallows immediately, that he does not let become more than half a second long, that she does not acknowledge because he does not want it acknowledged. Yemi Adeyinka has too much dignity to want his pain witnessed, and she has too much respect for him to witness it. She gets him upright. She gets his arm over her shoulder. She turns toward the sub-level 3 emergency corridor, Dara still anchored to her belt with both hands. Yemi's weight redistributed to her left side where her grip is strongest. The Varath soldier comes through the pressure door behind her and she does not see it in time. The directed energy pulse catches her across the right shoulder and the upper back in a 15-centimeter band, and she knows what it is before she fully processes that it has happened, because she smells it first. The specific smell of burning that is not external, that is coming from somewhere she cannot see because it is behind her. That is wrong in the precise way that burning is wrong when the thing burning is you. The right arm goes partly offline. Not entirely. The signal is there, but it is traveling through interference. She can close the hand, but it takes an instruction that usually doesn't require conscious sending. Nerve damage. She files this information in the same place she filed the Relay 7B fault indicator, the same place she filed the number 43, the same place she has been filing everything since 1422 that is real and true, and will need to be dealt with but cannot be dealt with right now. She keeps moving. Here is what the 12 pages of Varath intelligence files on human biology missed, and what their sensor technology was not built to detect, and what their 400 planetary suppressions had never given them reason to look for. The human adrenal response under mortal threat does not merely increase pain tolerance. It gates pain signal transmission. At the moment of acute mortal threat, norepinephrine and epinephrine flood the dorsal horn of the spinal cord and suppress the pain transmission pathway at a structural level, not by adding something but by blocking the signal before it reaches the brain in its full form. This is not a choice. It is not discipline or training or willpower or the particular stubbornness of one woman from a steel town in the northern Hungarian hills. It is a feature. It is an evolved feature of a species that spent 200,000 years in environments where the things trying to kill it were very large and the ability to keep fighting, the thing that was killing you long enough to kill it back, was the difference between passing on your genetics and not. Her nervous system has decided that the damage report is not currently useful. It will deliver the full report later. Right now, she moves. She moves with Yemi's arm over her shoulder, and Dara's hands on her belt, and the Varath sidearm in her right hand, and she thinks as she turns the corner toward the compression chamber. Okay. Right arm is decorative for now. I've got 4 working fingers on the left, and that's always been enough. The sub-level 3 emergency compression chamber is 4.2 meters by 3.8 meters, rated for 80 bar atmospheric pressure, built from the same materials as the platform's deepest structural hull, because the engineers who designed Tantalus understood that if something went wrong at the gas giant interface level, you needed somewhere that would hold. A directed energy weapon cannot penetrate it without a focused industrial cutting array. Roz knows this because she reviewed the specifications when she first came aboard and made a note of it the way she makes a note of all the places on a platform that will hold when everything else is failing. She gets them inside. She runs through the basic inventory of what they have: water recycler, emergency rations for 72 hours, a medical kit, the platform's emergency beacon that the Varath are almost certainly monitoring, but that she activates anyway, because the Reach's compact's response time may be useless. But it is not zero. Yemi is sitting with his back against the wall, and his breathing is the careful breathing of someone managing a process that has become complicated. Dara is sitting next to him, and she has taken his hand without being asked, and she is looking at Roz with eyes that are asking a question Roz cannot answer yet. You're going to stay in here, Roz says. Both of you. You don't open this door for anyone except me or someone from the compact. If it's not me and it's not compact markings, you don't open it. Understood? Yemi says. Roz. Understood? She says to both of them. Dara says in a voice that is still doing the brave project. Understood. Yemi looks at her for a long moment. He knows what she is about to do. He knows her well enough to know that she has already done the calculation, and that the calculation came out the way it came out. and that there is nothing he can say that will change the arithmetic. He says, "Come back." She does not answer. She seals the door. Bay 7 is at the end of the sub-level 3 service corridor, 110 meters from the compression chamber. The pressurized hydrogen fuel cells for the atmospheric skimmers are stored there in a rack configuration she has inspected 12 times. Most recently 6 days ago, when one of the monitoring systems was throwing a false charge level reading. She knows the rack layout, the pressure ratings, the valve configuration, and the location of the manual override that the Hypertherm PowerMax 45XP plasma cutter, running on the gas feed from the cells themselves, can access without requiring external power. She walks the corridor the way she has always walked a platform, like she knows where every bolt is and she put half of them there herself. She is not trying to survive the next 10 minutes. She has done the math on surviving the next 10 minutes, and the math does not give her a result she can use. What she is trying to do is make the next 10 minutes cost Tessaveth everything. What she is trying to do is buy enough time and create enough chaos that when the Reach's compact finally, belatedly, apologetically sends someone, there is still a platform to send them to, and 2 people in a compression chamber to recover. She thinks in the 30 seconds before she reaches Bay 7 about the sky over Miskolc in February. The particular gray of it, not the gray of weather, not the gray of clouds, but the gray of a place that has been industrial for 100 years and is in the process of becoming something else and hasn't decided yet what that something else is going to be. Iron smell, coal smoke, the feeling of standing at the edge of something that is ending so that something else can begin, and not knowing yet what the something else will be. She thought as a child that it was a sad sky. She understands now that it was not sad. It was between. She thinks about Casocoro's hands, open, palms up, the Red Cross armband. She reaches Bay 7. The RCV Steadfast Margin exits FTL 4.2 kilometers from Tantalus at a moment that its crew will later describe, in their reports to the Reach's compact, as within their mission-specified response window, which is technically true and will be the subject of a separate diplomatic conversation. The scan data they receive in the first 30 seconds is not what they expected. Vareth command signals, chaotic. 6 of 9 suppression units, offline or non-responsive. Bay 7, venting hydrogen in a pattern consistent with deliberate structural interference. The Vareth command vessel, repositioning, pulling back to a distance that the Sulini tactical officer identifies as consistent with a commander reassessing a situation that has not gone according to plan. 1 human biosign. Barely. Sub-level 3 service corridor. Not moving. First healer Orveth leads the boarding team. The Sulini are tall and trilaterally symmetric and deeply, structurally uncomfortable with violence. Their psychology was shaped by a pre-spaceflight history that solved its conflicts through extended formal mediation, and they have been trying to understand violent species for 400 years without ever quite succeeding. Orveth has done battlefield medicine. Orveth has seen what directed energy weapons do to soft tissue. Orveth has never seen a report like the one they are building as the team moves through Tantalus from the entry point at Corridor G9. The first unit, catastrophic sensor cluster damage inconsistent with any weapon in the Varath catalog. Blunt force trauma, the team forensic specialist identifies from a flat-faced impact instrument. Post-identification, a DeWalt DCG 460 angle grinder, recovered from the corridor floor, identified by serial number in the platform maintenance manifest. The ammonia contamination, the nitrogen vapor residue at the hydroponics junction, and 2 units there with cold-induced seal failure and directed energy entry wounds at the sensor clusters, close range. The electromagnetic burn pattern on the level 4 grating. The disrupted patrol unit with navigation damage consistent with being guided by its own corrupted system into a 480-volt energized surface. And at each location, the same biosign trail. 1 human, moving, injured, continuing. Orveth stands over Roz in the sub-level 3 service corridor and begins to dictate. The voice is not steady in the way that Yemi's voice was not steady. It is not steady for different reasons, for the reasons that a medic is not steady when they are looking at something their training did not prepare them for. Subject is a human female, 43 years. I am documenting this for the compact medical database. This may be the first complete record of a human under extended mortal combat stress. Directed energy burn covering 15 centimeters of posterior shoulder, third-degree tissue loss. 4-point contact bruising consistent with physical combat. Nitrogen cold exposure on both lower limbs. Blood loss estimated at 31%. Core temperature 38.9 degrees Celsius. Heart rate at time of recovery, 141 BPM. The medic is silent for a moment. The subject was found in a corridor, not in cover, facing the primary Varath ingress point, still holding an improvised impact weapon. A pause. I want the compact biology board to understand something. Our suppression models for Category 7 humans were built on the assumption that damage accumulation correlates with combat effectiveness reduction. Every data point I am looking at right now tells me that assumption is wrong. Not slightly wrong. Foundationally wrong. I don't know what the correct model is. I don't think we have a framework for it. The Selene trauma team is working and Roz is not conscious for any of this. But she surfaces once, briefly, for exactly long enough to focus on the tall, trilaterally symmetric figure leaning over her, to gather the sentence she has been holding on to, and to say it clearly. The compression chamber, sub-level 3, go get them. Then she is out. 11 days later, the thing she notices first is the ceiling. White, curved slightly. The hull construction of a Suleni medical vessel, which she recognizes from the mission briefing she read when she first joined Tantalus because she reads everything once and remembers what matters. The steadfast margin. She is on the steadfast margin. The thing she notices second is the right hand. She lifts it and closes it and opens it. The signal is there, traveling slower than it should, like a message arriving after a relay delay. But traveling. Not decorative, not anymore. The thing she notices third is the mug. Someone has placed it on the surface next to her bed. A Helix Atmospheric Resources GmbH branded mug. Dark blue, the company logo in a sans serif typeface that she has always found slightly too ambitious for a mid-tier gas extraction contractor. Full of something that smells unmistakably like tea. Real tea. Not the Suleni nutritional equivalent, which she knows from the mission briefing is technically adequate and reportedly tastes like the idea of warmth rather than warmth itself. Someone went to Tantalus, to the platform she had not thought of as anything other than a battlefield, and retrieved a mug from someone's locker and made tea in it, and left it next to her bed. The thoughtfulness of it makes her throat close. She doesn't analyze why. She picks up the mug. The recycled atmosphere on the steadfast margin smells like the cleaning compound they use on the deck plating, which is a compound she has never encountered before, and which reminds her, precisely and without preamble, of the municipal pool in Miskolc, where she learned to swim at age 7. The specific chemical smell of a public pool in a steel town, industrial and clean at once. The smell of Saturday mornings before anything was complicated. She holds on to the mug and she breathes the recycled air. And she gives herself exactly as long as it takes to finish the tea to simply exist without making any decisions. Then the liaison comes in. The Varath diplomatic envoy's name is Kosovar, and he has processed 400 planetary suppressions in his career, and he is very calm about everything. His argument is neat. It is, she will give him this, internally consistent. The Reach's Compact Conflict Protocols, Article 7. Civilian personnel engaging in active combat operations against Dominion personnel forfeit protected status. She is a civilian. She engaged in active combat operations. She destroyed Varath military equipment valued at 14 million compact credits. She wants to understand what the correct process is here. He is representing the Dominion in this matter. He wants extradition. He wants it on the record. He presents this in the measured tones of a man who has done this before and expects to do it again. He is very good at his job. Roz walks into the compact hearing chamber in her Helix Atmospheric Resources GmbH work jacket. It is dark blue, slightly too large at the shoulders. It was in her locker, and someone, presumably the same someone who retrieved the mug, brought it to her. And she does not know who that was, but she will find out and she will thank them. The right sleeve is rolled to the elbow to accommodate the nerve stimulation wrap on her forearm. The burn scar on her shoulder and upper back is covered by the jacket at the body but visible at the collar. A line of tissue that is the specific pink of recent damage, the color of something that has been through a process and come out the other side. She does not walk fast. She does not walk slow. She walks the way she walks across a platform. She sits down across from Kasovar. She looks first at the compact representatives. She does a count. She notes who is present in person. She notes who sent a proxy. She notes the proxies. She will remember the proxies. Then she looks at Kasovar. He finishes his argument. He is thorough. He has done this before. Roz is quiet for 4 seconds. He's right that I'm not military, she says. I'm a maintenance engineer. I fix things when they break. That's my job description. She lets that sit for a moment. You want to talk about Article 7, civilian personnel engaging in active combat. I want to talk about what happened in Medical Bay 1 of Tantalus platform at 1422. Platform time, 11 days ago. She does not look away from Kasovar. I want to talk about Caso Coro. 26 years old, Red Cross armband. Hands up. Your personnel scanned her, classified her as a non-threat, and killed her anyway. Not because she moved, not because she reached for anything, because your doctrine classifies all humans on a captured platform as resource liabilities with no distinction for medical personnel. A pause. I want to know which article covers that. She does not wait for an answer. You have conquered 400 worlds. I looked that up while I was in medical. 400 worlds. And in all of that, in 400 planetary suppressions and however many centuries of expansion, you have never, not once, fought anything that kept coming after you said it was done. You have never encountered a species that your scale could not measure. You classified Caso Coro as a non-threat and you killed her because of it, and I want you to think very carefully about what that tells you about the limits of your classification system. She looks at the compact representatives one by one, then back to Kasovar. Because I'm one maintenance engineer from a platform you don't consider worth naming in your fleet reports. And I want you to think about what happens when you make 8 billion of us angry. Kasovar begins a response. He is measured. He is precise. He raises 4 points, each of which is legally grounded in existing compact precedent. She lets him finish. Then, quietly, in a tone that has no heat in it at all, you scanned Caso Coro and you decided she wasn't a threat. A pause. I just want you to think about how that worked out for your risk assessment model. She does not elaborate. There is no elaboration necessary. The mathematics are available to anyone in the room who wishes to run them. Kasovar is 400 planetary suppressions in. He does not visibly react. He is very good at not visibly reacting. His chromatic stress indicators are not visible to human perception, but they are visible to Sulini perception, and First Healer Orveth, who is present as a compact medical observer, will report later to the board that Kasovar's secondary physiological markers shifted in the 3 to 7 nanometer range, typically associated with acute threat recognition. Not the threat recognition of someone facing a weapon. Something more complicated than that. The threat recognition of someone whose model of the world has just been shown a data point that the model was not built to process. He is afraid. He is carefully, professionally afraid, in a way he does not fully understand. And the not fully understanding is the part that is making it worse. And he will spend a great deal of time over the next months trying to build a framework for it, and the framework will not be adequate, and he will know that it is not adequate, and that knowledge will not leave him. Before the formal close of the hearing, the liaison leans over and speaks quietly into Roz's ear. She listens without turning her head. The liaison tells her that both protected individuals were recovered from the sub-level 3 compression chamber, that Yemi Adeyinka is in post-surgical recovery with a chest tube in place, and a prognosis of full return to function in 6 weeks, that Dara Achebe is physically unharmed and is currently in the care of the Steadfast Margin crew, who have discovered that Dara finds Selene trilateral symmetry fascinating, and has spent the last 3 days asking First Healer Orveth questions about Selene biology in the particular concentrated way that she asks questions. Like she has decided that the current activity is questions and nothing else exists. Roz closes her eyes. 4 seconds. She opens them. She picks up the Helix Atmospheric Resources GmbH mug from the hearing table. She brought it in with her, and she takes a sip. When Kasovar asks, formally for the record, whether the human respondent has any final statement, she thinks about Miskolc for exactly as long as she needs to. The February sky, iron and coal smoke, the gray of a place that used to be one thing and hasn't decided yet what it is becoming. She thought of it once as a place between. She understands now that between is not nothing. Between is where you find out what you're made of, in the gap between what you were and what you're going to be. She looks at Kasovar. 400 worlds, she says. You picked the wrong 401.